Chapter 3. The Sermon. 20 moonrise by, with a half-moon tide to die, 2 tiny seers passed behind Griffin's twins, head-gate to the empire, and as floating specks dusting the panning basin, beheld the imposing horizon sprawled, stirring with glimmering flecks. "This is surely the city sovereign," Orces said, gaping. They perched before sinking below the break-rim, gazing over countless domes atop jutting towers, all aglow checkered in coloured lines, etched deep in primeval bedrock, fanning the murk, stretching into the far darkening sea beyond. Codoc, looking off to the side, grew embarrassed beneath the weight of an actuality and said, "There it is." Orces looked likewise into the distance and spied that unmistakably dark, rising mass to be never more untouched by their bare eyes. There, poking up below sunlight, wavering through gloom, and long ago carved down from the sable euphotic table, glinted the onyx knot of 9 enormous needles. "I see wherein the sovereign sits, and I've never seen more," said Codoc. Entering down into the outlying plexus, Orces and Codoc were increasingly assaulted with sound. It was a stark contrast to the abyssal rim silence. They were nearly losing their composure, bathed in myriad cathedralian voices, tangling in a booming clamour. Orces's skin became pained raw against the rough oscillations. Though the city had endless turns into peculiar corridors, ending below upon many a darkened residence, out from which flowed causeways, weaving above into meandering passages, winding with curving byways and straight paths passing in parallax, there seemed no corner granting sanctuary from the grating vibrations persisting their skin. "My eyes are burning," grumbled Codoc. "This stale haze smells venomous." They followed directions given them by fashionable citizens, pointing down toward the oldest, innermost knot, known as Central District. "I feel itchy," Codoc said, spinning looks all around. "And everyone looks bloated." "They're all hobbling about, as if they are about to die," whispered Orces. "They're dressed nice, at least." "I'm not sure. They're in garb that seems all for look, and not for function. If any one coxcomb had to merely day-run the along-shelf rift in right-angle currents, they'd probably need to tear loose, naked, and then, in exhaustion, roll out and die. "I like high fashion as this," said Codoc, swivelling around, looking up and below, "even unto its loftiest ridiculousness." "Ridiculous? In a crammed, communal bowl as this, fashion is as essential for social survival, weaving through vengeful, slanderous opines, as ink spew and rubshock defends when skirting venomous fangs, snapping the outer hoops." "This bowl is surely crammed," grumbled Orces. "They are unpruned as these high walls entombing them. They look as if they've long been slow sipping the vengeful nectar of all this nightshade vine I see blooming up through the corners here." "They all look like they've lost health," whispered Codoc. "They don't seem to notice themselves. How can they not know? Just look at them." The 2 weary friends took pause at an Injinks inn, resting before carrying out their horrible task. "What intricate desolation have we made for ourselves here?" Orces said, peeking upward through a door-port. "Well, yes. It has been unfortunate to have such collision and collusion with this Ute," mumbled Codoc, ripping the timepiece from the wall and placing it outside on the window's farthest ledge. "No," said Orces, "not that. I have seen endless schools of catswin, shimmering clouds through the skin of the halocline, walls of shoals leaking down countless mud-crawler spindles, wagging as far as could be heard. I was nearly cooked alive when millions of crackling eels poured up, twisting along their shelf rift. I've seen bizarre orphaned tracks stretched, scattering forever across the seafloor. Once I looked down, hovering Clacka's Gorge, to see arising what must have glinted billions of billetfish, bubbling mayhem in their frenzied brood. And yet here I oar with unease. Here fold hovels rolled inside hovels, outside, above and below, all holding rooms as ours, each holding citizens like us, with each one taking 2 meals a day and night. A span of these occupied levels then rises, glowing up as far seen as only by what itself obscures, with basements plunging their cloistered tenants in stacked increments below. And then in all directions these buildings branch, broaden and spread, to be seen brimming over all horizons, on vantage from the top euphotic. It arises in me, an unexplained terror, from which no measured current flows, but only loops my shore. And taking pause while listening to the vast architecture, Orces turned inside and hovered down. I hear now why the sovereign city is so supremely clean, as countless resboles floated down outside, around their resting room, with their little legs clicking surfaces, as they scoured through, meticulously cleaning the corridors outside. "Yuck, must we sleep with that clicking?" grumbled Codoc. "That scratching sound is all around. How did bugs take instruction to not leave score marks all over?" "I haven't been able to sleep for 4 moontide anyhow," said Orces. "Yet rest we must." "But we must also make haste," Codoc said, sliding the daggers under their heaped garments, "for the longer we wait to carry out these dispatchings, the more my sadness twists in painful disgust." Orces awoke to the sound of Codoc fidgeting. "Ack! What is it?" asked Orces. "Do I look bloated? I feel bloated." "You look too close. The closer you look, the more you'll find," Codoc said, curling and twisting. "Sometimes it's not good to find more." "What is that sticking out of your hemline?" Codoc asked, leaning down to look at Orces's belly. "You have a little doll, a shell and twine? That's cute." "It's not mine," grumbled Orces, tucking the doll deep and turning away. Codoc watched after Orces in silence. "The citizens here don't seem to look at themselves close enough, do they?" Orces turned and carefully scanned Codoc. "Don't worry. You are not bloated. You look as perfectly ugly as ever." "Thanks." The priest, Zone Danymede, was lecturing to a congregation of 25 pupils when the 2 rogue seers, Orces and Codoc, creeped into the plain round Assembly Hall. They hovered in the back, leaning low. "Look at this," Codoc whispered in high wave upon Orces. "There are mostly Platons here. Platons are always a needy clack." "Shh! I've never been to a sermon before. I can't imagine what goes on here." "Let's try to fit in," Orces whispered, clasping the blade and leaning forward, tasting the room's flavor to gnaw the moment they would spit their vitriol. The priest in the pulpit paused as a murmur went through the crowd. A few parishioners turned backward in appraisal, beaming disapproving looks at the unkempt seers who had entered. Danymede solemnly continued. It had 4 arms moving over 3 legs, and each pose struck each symbol. It had wings like the Torunt, and stood as Calvi. It was a circle, ancient, like Zia, and stretched wide as Ulam. It held up 2 arms, and its face was as quick and complex as static. It stood before mirror angle to infinity, and it spoke. "I am all things that come before and come again. Yet this is only a conduit of truth, as it is draped the passage through. Do you not see the one lurking beyond? It is visible only in the corner of your eye. For once you look direct, it resumes shifting its forms, swaying trees, branching in this approaching storm. This precise moment, I was again sent forth to open before you. For outside, everything happens at once. Yet now it stands unfolding within these bordered vessels, into which the one who sent me has bound these fragments. I am this tunnel and its flow, a bargiel. I am sent from that force, hence that governs all. For all that is not, is. And here, my dear partitioners, is where we now find ourselves lost, Danymede said. The book of doors and the book of divided mirrors, when fractured in jungle plain anchor, had not yet weaved out enough upon the world to observe its fabric move or to recognize a window's outside tapping. So we must again go back to track from the beginning, from the 44,000 statements of our Uop. All was nothing, and nothing was all. Uopuan, humming, opened 0. 0 then separated itself, and there was also 1. Charge, singing, separated from charge, and there was everything, and everything laid upon nothing. 1 cleaved itself, and there was 2. 2 twirled, spinning stars, weaving light with dark, and fire burned outer darkness. And 2 mirrored, centering 3, spinning globes to suns, weaving day into night. And ocean yerks floated upon rock uprexia, and with 3 in between, 2 climbed up into 5, spinning winds around worlds, floating high clouds in their eye, and from between 5, 2 climbed over into 7, spinning heaven, weaving mud. 3 stacked itself thrice by its own reflection, towering into 9. All that is not. All that is not, is. And thence was born fiction, projecting images into artifice. And 1 once again appeared reflected above, spanning all that had come between into 11, as all that is gathers, all that is not spreads. 0, 1. So etched these thoughts, and answered its statement. I am the charge and its spark. I am the tunnel and its flow, the mechanism of all, Uopuan. And all that roam, all that fly, and all that swim, and all that float, do thus. For I am the all in all, out from which you shall never escape, and you shall never escape. Codoc folded up and leaned back. Yeah, I've already heard this gobbledygook. I know some statements, but there are 44,000. In annoyance, the priest said louder, Do thus. Horses flew up into the pulpit, circling around the priest. Codoc followed. Sacerdotal, screamed Danymede, frantically warbling back-paced, at which Codoc, in maddened frenzy with a puzzled look, shrieked, Saculus! They frantically exposed their daggers from within their meagre garments. Yet when close enough to feel the priest's static in first hone, Orces, pointing the barbarous edge flashing aloft, ready to hack the cowering priest's exposed flesh, froze, and could not slash it down. Danymede and Orces watched the blade drop and flutter to the floor as a screaming crowd, bumping frantic, flipping tables and twirling each other, scattered and rolled. Towering Orces and cowering Danymede locked eyes as debris swirled around them. Seeing this lunacy, Codoc was overwhelmed, slyly pitching a dagger into the corner. As twine charts and other objects churned around their heads in turbulence, Orces turned towards Codoc with a look of utmost misery and said, I cannot do it. I can never do it. Codoc said, I also cannot do this. How can I save you, Odom? How can I save you? The only time Codoc would ever hear Orces's voice, so harshly raised in a low, long wave. Thereout it howled, Gone, gone, I cannot save you, Odom. I should have been eaten by starving oceanids. Satsum, have your wrath upon me, because I will not do your bidding. And upon that statement, the stars faded and vanished from their skin, and Orces at once fell into weakness. Your mark is lifted, Orces, shrieked Codoc. Jolt up! Flee! Escape out! But it was too late to elude out of the now guard-clogged portals.